The morning sun had barely risen when a small figure stood outside the towering glass building, her tiny shadow trembling against the polished pavement, as if she didn't belong to the same world the adults around her hurried through. Cars rushed by, phones kept ringing, heels clicked fast across the entrance floor, but she stood motionless, clutching a torn school bag against her chest, as though it were her shield. Her hair was messy, her clothes slightly wrinkled, and her face held a mixture of innocence and quiet pain that didn't match her age. No one noticed her at first. Not the workers rushing in, not the security staff, not the executives walking with determination in their eyes. But someone did, someone who wasn't supposed to stop, someone who usually had no time for the small disruptions of life. Yet something about her, perhaps her eyes, perhaps her silence, or perhaps the fragile way she tried to look brave, forced him to pause. And that pause would change everything. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. His name was Arion Velasquez, a man whose presence normally intimidated boardrooms and whose decisions shaped industries. Known for discipline and efficiency, Arion was not the type to involve himself in anything outside agenda, profit, or performance. But life has moments where even the coldest routines are pierced by something raw and real. Today, that piercing came in the shape of a little girl who looked like she had been holding back tears for hours. Arion didn't hear her speak. He saw her lips move first, slow and hesitant, as if she were afraid her words might anger someone. He knelt, not because he understood what he was about to ask, but because his gut demanded it, and the closer he looked, the more he felt his world shift. Her eyes were soft, brown, almost pleading, but her next whispered words shattered something. Inside him completely. "My mommy is sick, but she still works. Can you please help her?" The sentence was simple, but it carried a lifetime of desperation behind it. Arion froze, caught somewhere between confusion and shock. This wasn't a request he had ever expected, but the pain on the girl's face left no space for distance. Something inside him stirred, something long buried under years of ambition and cold decisions. He quickly realized she wasn't lost. She wasn't begging for money, she wasn't wandering, she was here for someone. But Arion had no idea who that mommy was until she mentioned a name, Mira Salado, a contractual cleaning staff member assigned to the lower floors of his corporate building. He recognized her vaguely, mostly from reports, schedules, or occasional glimpses of her quietly sweeping corridors past midnight. He had never spoken to her. She was one of hundreds trying to survive on wages barely enough to keep them breathing. Yet today, her daughter was right in front of him, trembling with the weight of something far bigger than childhood should carry. In the next moment, the building's reality came crashing in. Arion led the little girl, whose name he soon learned was Lena, inside. The lights were bright, the interior cold and metallic, and the atmosphere stiff with the energy of calculated ambition. Lena clutched his sleeve tightly, overwhelmed but determined. She guided him toward the service floor where the cleaning team operated, an area of the building executives barely acknowledged. As they walked, Arion's mind kept replaying her words. "My mommy is sick, but she still works. Why would someone ill be forced to come in? Why hadn't anyone reported it? Why was a child wandering alone just to find help?" When they reached the service hallway, the answer revealed itself like a punch to the chest. There, sitting weakly on a plastic chair with her mop leaning on the wall, was Mira. She was pale, so pale her lips carried no color. Her breathing was shallow, her hands trembling as she tried to steady herself. Sweat covered her forehead despite the cool air. She attempted to stand when she saw Arion, instinctively fearing she might be reprimanded for not completing her shift. But the moment she tried to rise, her body nearly collapsed. Lena rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist just in time. Mira kept apologizing, breathless, terrified, promising she would finish the work soon. She hadn't eaten properly in days, hadn't rested, hadn't dared take a leave because the penalty would mean reduced pay, and reduced pay meant no treatment, no medicine, no rent, no survival. Arion watched, stunned, as realization sank in. This woman had been coming to work every day while battling a severe illness. Her supervisor, focused only on meeting quotas, had ignored her visible decline. She didn't have the luxury to complain, to rest, to ask for help. She had only one option: endure. And yet, even in her fragile state, her first instinct was to protect her job rather than herself. The system wasn't designed for people like Mira. It was designed to move forward, even if it crushed lives along the way. Arian sighed deeply, the weight of his company's invisible cracks pressing onto him in a way he had never felt before. He helped Mira sit comfortably, got immediate medical assistance through the company's emergency team, and arranged transportation to a hospital. Lena stayed by her mother's side, clutching her hand tightly, while Arian followed them in stunned silence. As the ambulance rolled through the daylight streets, Arian looked out the window, his thoughts shaken loose from the life he thought he understood. He kept remembering the smallest details: Lena's trembling voice, Mira's apologetic smile, the exhaustion in her eyes that carried stories of silent suffering. Hours passed at the hospital. Doctors rushed in and out. Arian paced, unable to sit still. The diagnosis was far more serious than he had imagined. Mira had been battling a respiratory infection that had escalated dangerously due to overwork and lack of treatment. She needed rest, medication, and time away from physical strain, none of which her life had allowed. The doctor, unaware of Arian's position, casually mentioned that cases like hers were common among labor workers who pushed themselves beyond their limits just to survive. Arian felt a deep sting of guilt. How many Miras existed in his company? How many unseen workers held up the building's cleanliness, maintenance, and functionality while being ignored? And how many came to work sick because missing a day meant missing food? As the sun moved above the skyline and filled the room with a soft, warm glow, Lena approached Arian. She wasn't crying now. Instead, she looked up with the quiet bravery children often have when life forces maturity onto them. She told him how Mira used to work double shifts to save for her school supplies, how she hid her pain so Lena wouldn't worry, how she woke up early even when fevers consumed her. She would whisper to herself that she had to keep going for Lena's future, and even when she grew too weak to stand properly, she kept working because she feared losing her job more than she feared losing her health. Arian's chest tightened with every word. There was something incredibly powerful and heartbreaking about a mother sacrificing her own wellness just to keep her daughter afloat. By noon, Arian made several decisions that would ripple through lives far beyond Mira's. First, he covered all medical expenses personally. Second, he ordered an investigation into the exploitation occurring in the lower staff departments. Third, he announced new policies: paid sick leave for all workers, medical coverage, wellness checks, and emergency funds. These decisions weren't charity. They were overdue corrections, a responsibility he finally acknowledged. But most importantly, he gave Mira a position in the administrative department once she recovered, less physically demanding, stable and permanent, a role she could handle without risking her life. Days passed, and Mira slowly regained her strength. When she was well enough to talk, she expressed gratitude in a voice still fragile but filled with newfound hope. She admitted she had never expected kindness from someone like him, someone at the top. But what truly humbled Arian wasn't her gratitude, it was Lena's joy. She no longer carried the heavy burden of fear. Her smile returned. She returned to school with a brightness that lit up the hospital room every time she visited with her homework, telling her mother stories about her classes as Mira listened with peaceful eyes. When Mira was finally discharged and returned home, she found her small apartment cleaned, organized, and stocked with groceries, arranged quietly by Arian's team. She tried to protest at first, but Arian assured her that sometimes people needed support systems to stand tall again. He said the strength she had shown all those years deserved honor, not judgment. In the weeks that followed, something even more remarkable happened. Mira wasn't just recovering, she was blooming. She walked into her new job with confidence, wearing simple but clean clothes, her hair neatly tied, her eyes filled with steady determination. Colleagues admired her resilience, and some even found inspiration in her journey. Arian himself visited the department occasionally, less as a CEO and more as someone who wanted to make sure the system upheld fairness. Every time he crossed paths with Mira or Lena, he felt something shift within him, a reminder that leadership isn't defined by power, but by the lives it touches. Months later, at a company event, Mira was invited to speak. She didn't use fancy words. She didn't talk about suffering or injustice. Instead, she simply shared the truth, that sometimes one act of kindness becomes the turning point in someone's life. Her eyes shone with tears. She tried to hide, but she continued bravely, saying she never imagined her daughter's plea would reach the heart of someone capable of changing their lives forever. At that moment, Lena stood beside her mother, holding her hand. The audience felt the weight of their story, the depth of their bond, the beauty of a child's love, strong enough to move mountains. Aryan felt the emotions too, but he quietly stepped back, knowing the moment belonged to them. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your engagement helps inspire more people through real, emotional stories. Before we end, here is a special request. Comment the word hope if you believe even one act of kindness can change a life. And with that, the story closes, reminding us that sometimes the smallest whisper can awaken the greatest humanity.